Hi, I'm Kat, and I don't know what I'm doing. Hello, and welcome. If you're new here, that's awesome, so am I. I think the last time I made a YouTube video was, I think in 2019, when I was working on my wedding dress, and I thought I was gonna talk about the whole process on YouTube, and then I realized that actually making a wedding dress takes a lot of work, and I abandoned the videos. But anyways, it has been suggested that I maybe make a vlog. This is a test. It's a test to see if you guys like it and to see if I like. Basically, instead of sharing the smaller snippets of what I'm working on like Instagram stories where they disappear and little pieces of content as I'm working on them on Instagram and TikTok, which is mostly where I live, I'm going to show you in more detail all of the things that I've worked on this week. And the idea is that each week there will be more all of the things and you'll get to see all my projects. The disclaimer, warning in advance, it's gonna be all over the place because my projects are all over the place. I work on lots of things. This week I've got 2 different knitting projects, a sewing project, a new sewing machine, weaving. I've started weaving. I'm thinking about beadwork at the moment. There's just a lot. I guess in addition to that, it's probably going to turn into a little bit of a life update, and I'll also try and sort of share helpful tips and tricks that I've learned along the way, or maybe specific to a project each week. I don't know. But if you want to see anything specific, let me know in the comments. And yeah, let's get started. So the very first project I worked on this week, almost a full week ago, so we're just sliding in under the bar at the last minute there, is the first project on my new B68 AIRLOCK. So I am a Bernina New Zealand ambassador for their bernette range. You can see the 2 machines behind me. This one just came into my life last week. I'm very, very excited about it. It's the B68 AIRLOCK. It's air threaded, which is really, really cool. And I made this pair of sweatpants just to test out the new machine, to test its features, and to see how it compared to the last one I had, which was the B48. I'm working on a blog post to compare them, but I definitely need to have more than one project under my belt before I can tell you with any sort of authority how they compare to each other. But anyway, the sweatpants project was really cool. I work from home 100% of the time. We don't actually have an office. So most of the time it's like business up top, as you can see here, and then sweatpants underneath, which is actually wearing these sweatpants. But most of the time, yeah, I sit in front of my computer all day with Theo, my cat, in my lap, which means the pants need to be comfortable, and I am very lacking in the sweatpants department at the moment, so I decided to make another pair. It's a good opportunity. I have an old draft. It's a sort of self-drafted. It's based on a ready-to-wear pair that my husband John loved to death, quite literally. So I made him copies first, and then I was just wearing his sweatpants, as you do. Then I realized that actually there were not too many modifications that I needed to make in order to make them better for myself. So this is only the second pair that I've made specifically for myself. I decreased the rise because I don't need quite the amount of crotch depth, and made the waistband just a little bit snugger for me because I like to wear my sweatpants up around my waist. The construction of that original ready-to-wear pair was really cool and informed a lot of how I construct these sweatpants. So the type of pockets that I do are a sort of pocket inset, and then they're stitched using the cover stitch to the front of the pant, like a kind of like a patch pocket but on the inside, which is quite cool. And then they have a sort of waistband that doesn't involve making a casing, which I love because it's so fast. So you use the overlock function on the machine to overlock around the upper edge of the waistband and then fold it in on itself, so it's a self-facing, and then you can just top stitch that down, which is awesome because it keeps the waistband from doing any sort of like wiggly nonsense. There's no opportunity for it to move around in there. You get even distribution all the way around if you want it. I tend to distribute a little bit more around the back of the waistband, but I can make that choice. Like, that choice isn't made for me, which is really awesome. So yeah, that was a really cool first project with the AIRLOCK. I am planning a color-blocked t-shirt next. I think that's going to be my next project, and you can actually see behind me, this fabric is one of the fabrics that I'm planning on using for that. It's got 3 colors. I think I might do like a pocket. To be determined, I'm not really sure. So yeah, stay tuned for more knitwear content because I am living in that at the moment. Next up on my list, got quite a few knitting projects going on. I'm actually working on a really big sweater project at the moment, but I'm gonna save that for 2 seconds and show you what I was working on before the yarn for the sweater project came. So this is, I'll put a picture up, it's called the Kolorblok Shawl. This is what it looks like so far. First 3 colors. This is gonna be, these are actually minis. So I have 10 minis that I'm gonna use, and they each have this little gray section in between them, which is really awesome because it breaks it up. And I'm so excited about this. It's gonna fade into sort of, like blues and grays and then end with purples, and I just think that's gonna be so nice, and it adds a little bit of extra color. I don't usually play with these colors, so I'm really excited about that. And this is Bonnie from Union Fiber. This is her Elements mini skein set, And while I was working on this, she actually announced that she's coming up to Auckland to do a trunk show at Lupine Wool. I went to the trunk show, of course, and I got some delicious goodies from that. So I've got a sweater lot and also a set to make a 3-color shawl with, because I love the size of 300-gram-ish shawls. It's really good. It's like wearing a blanket. I love it so much. So I'm really excited to get started on those projects, but I can't because I have this big sweater project going on at the moment. So that's my next thing. The big sweater project, the pattern that I'm using is called Reborn. It's an Unwind pattern. And this is what I have so far. I started this 3 days ago. So teeny tiny amount of progress. This is the yoke of it. I love it so much. I love these colors. This is my favorite color. This purple is my actual favorite shade of purple. And then we fade into this beautiful beige color that I realized last night as I was knitting. I was sitting on the couch working on this, and Theo came up to lay with me, and it's exactly the same color that he is, so that's really adorable. So I'm trying to finish the Reborn sweater for Woolfest, which is about a month from now, which is a little bit of a time crunch, especially considering I do have other projects going on at the moment. Like a sweater in a month is not unreasonable, but a sweater in a month along with all the other things might get a little bit tight, especially when it's a 4-color colorwork sweater. But that's okay. The reason I'm trying to get it finished for Woolfest is that my friend Joy of the Yarn Queen here in New Zealand has just brought this yarn that I'm using for this sweater. It's called Earth 16 fingering into New Zealand. Those are my colors. And she's gonna have it at Woolfest, and I would really like to finish it. She actually gifted me this yarn to make the sweater, so thank you, Joy, for that. I was so excited about it. This sweater's been in my queue for ages. I really want to try to get it done before Woolfest so that she can see it at Woolfest, and she's gonna have the yarn there, which is super, super cool, and I'm probably gonna get more because it's amazing. So that's that project. I will be knitting as fast as I can. Next up, we're gonna pivot crafts again and go over to weaving. So weaving is my latest, greatest obsession. A couple weeks ago now, my friend Julie gave me her Ashford 16-inch Heddle Loom because she wasn't getting the use out of it that she wanted to. So I made my first project on it, which is a beautiful sort of color gradient green and purple scarf. Great first project. I had so much fun, and immediately I was like, okay, what are we weaving next? This is great. This is so much fun. So I went stash diving. I don't want to buy yarn for weaving just yet because I'm not super confident in my skills. I'm trying to use up some of the old stash first, and I found some beautiful green alpaca lace that I had originally bought to make something for my sister. I don't remember what it was going to be, but 2 skeins of lace weight yarn, and I thought I'm going to weave this into a scarf. And so I grabbed a little bit of a dark brown that looked nice with it, also lace weight, but I think a wool instead of alpaca. And I'm working on that scarf now. So I'm not too far in. It's about a foot long at the moment. And I learned from my last weaving project, instead of sort of guessing at how long the scarf is going to be, because you do, when you warp your loom, you warp it to a certain length, try to account for shrinkage, which is really difficult if it's your first weaving project, and also try to account for take up, which is the amount of yarn that ends up on the sort of, because when you weave, it sets up and down, right? So it's a little shorter when it's woven like this as opposed to it is when it's straight. Also very difficult to figure out when you're a beginner. I've estimated the scarf is going to be about 75 inches long, which is a great length for a scarf as far as I'm concerned. What I have done is I've taken a piece of twill tape and I've written out 10 centimeter and 5-inch increments on it, so centimeters on one side and inches on the other. I've pinned it to the start of the scarf, and as it winds up, the twill tape winds up with it. You could just do this with a measuring tape, but I didn't want to sacrifice my measuring tape for the length of this weaving project because I use it when I'm sewing. So this piece of twill tape coils up along with the finished woven item so you can see exactly how long it is. Obviously there's maybe a little bit of shrinkage going to happen there as well, but I'm trying to coil it up at the same tension that the scarf is coiled, so hopefully I'll be able to get within a couple inches, because my scarf, my first scarf when I wove it, I lost 8 inches. And unfortunately, I was shooting long, so I tried to make a really long scarf and I ended up with an average size scarf. If I had tried to make an average size scarf, I think it probably would have been too short to wear, but we just squeezed in there. So I was really lucky with the first project. I'm trying to turn that luck into pre-planning this time. I should mention as well, if you're getting into weaving and you want to sort of see what the process is like, when I was working on my first scarf, that blue one, I documented all the articles that I read and blog posts and videos that I watched and everything, and I put that all together in a blog post, so I'll link that. And if you're interested, you can go through and read sort of what I looked at and what the thought process was and all of that. And if that is helpful, then that's awesome. But anyway, that's the weaving. I'm really excited about it, especially because it's a lace weight. My first one was a 4-ply project, so the yarn, the resulting sweater was a little bit thicker. Resulting scarf was a little bit thicker. And this one looks too thin. Like, it looks objectively, when you look at it on the loom, you can see right through it. It's like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna work yet. Kind of thought that about the other one as well, and it folded up really nicely. Like, it bloomed, the yarn bloomed when I washed it, so fingers crossed that this one does the same thing as well. And it should end up being just a really lovely, lightweight but still warm drapey scarf, and I'm super excited. I think it's gonna, I really do. I think it's gonna turn out so beautiful, and my plan is to give it to Lil, and I think that I'm gonna be able to do that instead of keeping it because I have some more lace weight yarn that I'm already planning on a scarf for myself if this works. I do also have quite a few other weaving projects that I kind of have in the pipeline. I'm really excited about them because they're going to be using the stash yarn. We haven't gotten to the part where I'm thinking about buying new yarn yet, which is really great because there's no room for new yarn. I need to get through some of it before I can get more. But I've got some souvenir yarn from a trip to Ireland that I've been waiting to use for years because there just wasn't quite enough of it to make a big scarf, to knit a big scarf. But if I weave it instead of knitting it, the finished object will be bigger, thinner but bigger, which is fine because the yarn is quite thick to begin with. I'm not starting that immediately because I need a different heddle size or reed size for it, so I'm going to need to spend a little bit of money to get that. I also want to try double width double width weaving. So you can basically, you weave something. If you imagine a finished object like this, you weave it like this, so it's attached with a hinge on the one side and open on the other side. Really cool. No idea how to warp a loom for that. Gonna figure it out though. It looks really awesome. So my 16-inch loom could potentially produce a 22-inch wide scarf, which would be really cool. I'd like to try that for my lace weight. So I've got the Ireland souvenir yarn. I've got the lace weight, potentially double wide. I also have a couple balls of white that I'm looking at dyeing. I haven't dyed yarn in a really long time. I dye a lot of fabric, I don't dye a lot of yarn. So I think that'd be really cool. I could do 4 different shades of pink and make like a check scarf out of them. And then after that, I think it's gonna be time to graduate from scarves. We will see. But I have a lot in the pipeline for weaving, in addition to all of the knitting stuff that I have going on and obviously all the sewing projects. So I think that's gonna be really fun. And the cool thing about weaving is it progresses quite quickly. So you can sit down and in not a lot of time weave a couple of inches and feel like you've accomplished something, which I really enjoy. I think that's a lot of fun. It is quite a stationary hobby. Like, the loom is a little bit difficult to transport, but still fun. Still really enjoying it. So I think actually that's all the projects that I've actually worked on in the last week. I did give you a couple little sneak peeks at things that I'm thinking about working on in the future. Full disclosure, I keep a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet has, should we look really quick? 62. There are 62 items on the spreadsheet of projects I would like to or am currently in the process of making. There's a different ideas spreadsheet, so like this is the things where I already have some of the supplies for, or I've like actually thought out the idea. If it's not to that stage yet, it goes on a different list. So 62 projects basically like in the planning phase or beyond, which is fun. I'm not sure what I'm gonna work on next. I might tell you about something. I've got this really cool idea for a leather knitting needle case. I have all the supplies for it now. I'm actually looking, there's some right over there. I'm not sure when that's gonna happen because it's quite a big involved project and I need to sort of clear other things first before I get into that, but I think it's gonna be really cool. Not sure when we're gonna work on that, but I've got quite a few other just like really fun projects like that that are on that list, and I will get there when I get there, and I'll tell you about it when I do, I hope. Should we do, I mean, you've made it through quite a long video. Should we do maybe, we could do a life update, can do a hot tip. Let's do that. We're planning as we go. If you have segment ideas for the weekly vlog, if it does turn into a weekly vlog, shout them in the comments. Or if you liked a particular section, like if you want to hear more about things I might be doing, or if you want me to get into like more of the detail of something like techniques or whatever. But yeah, we'll end this with a small life update and a tip. Yeah, first? Okay, life update. We are having our kitchen redone. This is very complicated because we're having it redone while we're away. I think it's going to be ideal because then we don't have to be living in this house while they're tearing it apart. I'm going back to visit my parents in a couple months in the States. And we're going to see their new house in Ohio for the first time, which is really cool. And at the same time, the kitchen is being redone, which basically means we need to do this whole trip planning thing and the whole kitchen renovation planning thing all at the same time and have them done before we leave. And yesterday was sort of finishing shopping day, so we went shopping for paint colors. We already had picked out a tile for the, like, they call them splashbacks in New Zealand, but backsplashes in the US. So I still call it a backsplash. It's just how it comes out of my mouth. So we'd already picked out the tile. We went to get paint swatches. We went to look at like faucets, sink head things, and handles and stuff. And it's quite a mission. I mean, I know people do this for a job, but this is our first renovation project. So I am learning all of this stuff for the first time, and it is wild, and I'm going to be really excited when it's finished. But boy howdy, I have never had a conversation that long about a light fixture in my whole entire life. And it is something to get used to. So that's been great. That's the life update. Theo's doing really well. He had some tummy problems a couple weeks ago, but our current plan for that seems to be working out. So I have a follow-up visit with the vet in a couple weeks. And I suspect at this time, I don't know if we want to document this forever on the internet, I suspect at this time that he might have a food intolerance, so I'm working on that with the vet. But we'll see. It could be not that. It could be not related to anything like that at all. But the important thing is that right now he's feeling really great, so that's cool. Yeah, that can be the life update. Theo's doing great. Kitchen is stressful. Ask me again next week. All right, and okay, we're going to end on a tip. I have to think of a tip. Okay, I've thought of a tip. So working on my Reborn sweater, which is obviously stranded color work, but also is in the round. So it's top down seamless in the round. You start at the neck, you knit down the body, and then you pick up the sleeves and knit down the sleeves. Pretty standard stuff. When knitters, generally speaking, definitely myself included, but most knitters, when they knit in the round, their gauge tends to be different from when they knit back and forth. So knit this way, purl that way, right? And this becomes even more true with color work, but also if color work is written to be knit in the round, it's very difficult to adapt that, not impossible, but very difficult to adapt that to purl. So when you're knitting your swatch, when you want to figure out what your gauge is, and you don't want to knit a whole tube, here's the tip. So this is my swatch. It's quite little because it didn't take me long to figure things out. Front of the swatch looks pretty normal, got a little bit of color work, got a little bit of standard knitting. If you turn it around, we have the regular floats from the color work. That's, you know, pretty fine. But we also have these really long floats, right? They go the whole length of the swatch like that. And that is because when I'm knitting, in order to simulate knitting in the round, what you do is you knit across the row, and then if you're using a circular needle, you slide your knitting to the other side, bring the yarn back around, and then knit across again, and then slide your knitting down to the other side. So you're only knitting the knits, right? You're not turning it around and knitting back across the purls. You're just pulling these floats all the way around. This is an accurate representation of what my gauge is in the round without having to knit a whole tube. So it saves quite a lot of time. That's your top tip of the day. I hope it helps somebody. In conclusion, I hope you liked this video. It was definitely a test. We will see if it continues. Let me know if you want me to continue. If not, you can see little snippets of these projects happening in real time on my Instagram stories, and you can check out all of the other work that I'm up to on Instagram and TikTok, and that's me. If you'd like to subscribe, I'd love for you to do that, but don't feel they tell you to say that. It just feels very disingenuous. If you want the next one to pop up, subscribe and it'll do the thing for you. Let me know also what you're working on. I'd love to know. All right, see you later. Bye.